Chapter 316, Teamwork. Aside from Fire Grand Magus Marceau, the group included 1 thief, 1 priest, 2 mages and 3 swordsmen. The strength of these adventurers weren't weak. Their average age was around 40 and they were all experienced fighters. Marceau seemed to be the leader among these adventurers. Therefore they immediately readied their weapons to attack Marceau as soon as her words sounded. The 2 mages below were a lightning adept mage and a water archmage. They were the first to make a move. The opening salvo was several sizzling lightning and thunderballs, their electric sparks bursting out to smash into Marceau. The water archmage waved his magic staff around to release some sharp, cold, shiny icicles that hurtled fiercely at Marceau from below. The priest chanted a magic restoration spell, after which a silver halo enveloped Marceau's body. Her mental strength had previously been overspent, but the effect of the silver halo restored it from depletion. Shimmering light circles sparkled on her old wrinkled face. One of the 2 senior swordsmen instantly stepped over to protect Marceau. 2 huge iron shields were erected at the front. The shifty-eyed thief slipped through the thick forest like a raccoon, setting up traps and readying them. Marceau was still advancing straight towards Marceau. He had already taken note of this group's appearances and various strength thanks to the 2 young demons. As he flew, he took at the bone staff, spreading out a thick mass of black fog around himself. Marceau vanished in the midst of the thick smoke. The lightning balls and icicles all collided into the thick black fog. However, as Marceau's body had suddenly disappeared, these attacks could no longer find their target. They turned to crash into each other instead, creating huge explosions. When the lightning balls and icicles dissipated into nothingness, the thick black fog also gradually spread out as well. The team of adventurers led by Marceau had also finished their preparations and were staring at the center of the fog. The 3 swordsmen had temporarily switched to being 3 archers as they raised their bows, waiting only for Marceau to show himself. However, there was no trace of Marceau in the clear blue sky when the thick black fog dissipated. He had vanished without a sound or a shadow. The adventurers who were ready to attack him head-on could only look at the sky in puzzlement. Rumble. Dirt mounds suddenly emerged from the ground without a warning. The adventurers had been paying attention to the sky, were caught off guard by the movements underneath. Grand Magus Marceau and the water archmage were the first to fly up. The 3 swordsmen reacted swiftly. They grabbed the iron shields to block the earth from attacking the lightning mage and the priest. The attacks threw the swordsmen up into the air, but most of the impact was lessened by the shields. The swordsmen were meant to be meat shields in battles, so they weren't injured much. The thief had extraordinary sensitivities. Leaping with the tips of his feet like a monkey swinging on the trees, he used prearranged silver silk threads to swing to a towering tree and avoided all of the attacks from the mounds. He landed on a big tree before using a dagger to cut off some rope. A tree trunk whittled sharp suddenly flew out straight toward Marceau, who was hiding behind a tree. Upon seeing the thief's action, the rest of the adventurers immediately aimed their attacks at that tree. In a blink of an eye, dozens of attacks rained down in all directions. Marceau, who'd originally thought that they wouldn't be able to find him, could only awkwardly jump out from behind the tree. As he defended against the various attacks, an ice arrow nailed his thigh. A lightning ball exploded and hit him with its flying sparks. Marceau's whole body became numb. His hair that had just grown out all stood directly upright. "Kill him, he's been hit," the thief shouted loudly. The priest chanted a long incantation and 3 dizzying beams of radiance shone upon the 3 swordsmen. Now that the spells of strength and armor, God's blessing and brute strength had been cast, the light churned in gorgeous fashions in their chest as they ferociously rushed Marceau. What a horrifying combination of adventurers! Marceau's heart jumped with fright for a moment before he rapidly retreated into the woods. His speed was very fast as he quickly left the 3 reinforced swordsmen in the dust and waited for an opportunity to make a move. This adventurer team obviously had practical battle experience. Otherwise it couldn't have been possible for them to coordinate so tacitly. They had great trust for each other, and when the priest, the mages, the swordsman and the thief united, they created enormous offensive power. Marceau had initially thought he could easily deal with them, but his head now ached with the conundrum of dealing with them. The power of the 3 swordsmen had been increased a level thanks to the priest's magic, but Marceau was confident he could neatly kill them in a few minutes even if he faced all 3 of them at the same time. However, The mages who were staring at him as if looking at prey certainly wouldn't let him succeed. The priest was hard at work casting magic at the three swordsmen, constantly supplying them with energy. This wasn't something Han Shao could hold up against. Han Shao pondered as he remained concealed before finally realizing that this team didn't have a light mage. He immediately took this opportunity to summon a great deal of dark creatures in secret while casting the canopy of necromancy at the same time. When the wood elite zombie appeared, he hid at a big tree the thief was standing on and utilized his control over plants to order the tree to wrap around the thief as per Han Shao's command. The soft tree branches turned into deadly weapons, instantly drilling through the thief's body. Caddy. The adventurer team was forming a firm defensive formation. When the tree branches penetrated the thief, the priest let out a big shrill scream in agony. The 30-odd-years-old woman seemed to be the wife of the thief. His death dealt her a great blow. "There's a druid here, be careful everyone," Marceau hastily shouted at a reminder. The three swordsmen on the ground immediately waved their broadswords to clear away all of the plants around them. As for the priest, she still looked around in caution despite the fury in her heart. Not finding her target, she stabbed into Marceau's shield. She started cursing crazily with grief, releasing spell after spell to probe where the enemy was. So many people. Probing with her magic, the priest sensed the sudden presence of many people in all directions. This awoke her from the blindness of her fury. She mumbled as she looked around. How many? How many people?" Marceau asked urgently with great anxiety. "A lot too many," the priest answered. She glanced at the thief's body and pleaded to Marceau, "Get his body first, hurry. Take Caddy's body, leave this place." "Damn it, now that I think about it, he's also a necromancer," Marceau shouted out loudly. The three swordsmen risked their lives to rush towards the thief's body. It was too late. Accompanied by rustling sounds from the thick forest, a great horde of undead creatures slowly appeared. There were amongst them an evil knight on a fire-spitting skeletal warhorse with his 2-meter-long bone lance raised high, his ice-cold emotionless eyes nailing the three swordsmen. 10 enormous hate warriors with rotting bodies were behind the hate knights, each holding either a big mace or a long spiked pole. Under the deathly aura's manipulation, they slowly flocked towards the adventurer team standing in the middle of the scene. The hearts of Marceau's group became increasingly heavier upon the appearance of the undead creatures. When a swordsman brought back the thief's body, Marceau immediately ordered, "I'll open up the path. You guys leave this place now." 6 fire snakes flew up their raging flames, bringing about a burning high temperature. This was something extremely horrifying that also upset the undead creatures. The high temperature would burn their cold bodies uncontrollably, with the fiery red flames sweeping away the thick smell of death. Their souls would then fall into an endless abyss. Therefore the undead creatures instinctively retreated when the 5 fire snakes flew out to hinder the 2 hate warriors, not wanting to suffer any agony from the flames. The 2 hate warriors only drew near after Han Shao gave them orders again. As for the evil knight of a higher rank, he moved firmly towards the flames to attack the adventurers. Undead creatures were born afraid of fire. However, the higher their level, the less their fear of flames. The hate warriors could just manage to hold on, while the evil knight wasn't afraid at all. He charged forward in accordance to Han Shao's commands. A gout of flame came crashing in from not too far away. The few low-rank creatures such as skeletal and zombie warriors were immediately charred to cinders. Even the hate warriors constantly retreated backward, not daring to be near to those flames. The big-headed fire elite zombie was within the light of the flames. He'd yet to be able to exercise control over the flames on his body, so he'd actually accidentally burned his own kind. Still, he heeded Han Shao's order like it was an imperial edict and opened his mouth wide to swallow the fire snakes released by Marceau, not letting her take advantage of the flames to flee from the undead creatures. Chapter 317, Complete Annihilation. What is it? Fire Grand Magus Marceau exclaimed when she was shocked by the sudden appearance of the fire elite zombie. After the big-headed fire elite zombie swallowed the flames, he grinned at Marceau, then opened his mouth and spat them all back out. The fire snakes were now no longer under Marceau's control and actually churned back over to attack the adventurers. The low-level undead creatures in the surroundings all instinctively retreated in the face of the intense heat. Jumping flames in the shape of lotus flower petals seemed to burn continuously on the fire elite zombie's frame. His deep red armor shot out red light everywhere, When skeletal warriors were hit by even a little spark from it, they were immediately destroyed and turned into dust. The fire snakes that the Fire Elite zombie spat out was even more powerful. Not only did it force the adventurers to continuously duck and weave, even the undead creatures needed to retreat. Out of them, the Evil Knights and Hatred Knights also sensed a threat, causing them to quickly leave retreat from the incineration of the flames. "Idiot, you can't even tell our people apart from enemies," Marceau scolded quietly, then gave another order to the Earth Elite Zombie and Wood Elite Zombie. The earth trembled and rumbled beneath three swordsmen with sharp earthen spikes shooting out again. The large tree branches danced crazily in the distance, while the branches became life-reaping arrows that shot towards the team of adventurers. The Fire Elite Zombie charged towards the three swordsmen like an enormous firebrand, creating waves of intense flames in front of them. The swordsmen's bodies quickly started burning when even a spark stuck to their bodies. The Evil Knight held a large bone spike in its hand and flung it towards the sky. The priests and mages were busy with dealing with the attacks from the branches and thus were unable to avoid the path of the Evil Knight's huge bone spike. Marceau also released the Demon Slayer Edge as arrows filled the sky. Pitiful howls suddenly sounded through the sky, then instantly stopped. The lives of all of the adventurers except Marceau's had been ended in a few breaths. Marceau glared at Marceau with hatred as she panted. When she noticed that all of her companions had died, she took out a magic scroll and started to chant a long spell. Intense magical pulses traveled out from the scroll. The space in front of Marceau started to distort until a long and sharp blade formed in the sky. The terrifying spatial movement gathered up a dense amount of magical element, causing rays of blinding light to shoot everywhere. "Not good, this is the spatial edge!" A thought flashed across Marceau's mind, causing him to suddenly remember the terrifying and forbidden spatial spell Spatial Edge. He was astounded and immediately chanted out spells in order to send the undead creatures back to the other dimension as he tried to escape the area of effect of the spell. Spatial Edge was a forbidden spell within the area of space. Legend said that it could cut through anything, no matter how durable. Marceau never would have thought that Marceau would own a valuable scroll of such a forbidden spell. The moment he felt a long giant blade twist out of space, he immediately retreated at all costs. A flash of white light around 20 meters long chopped down from the sky. All hard boulders that it passed through, including the black armor of the Evil Knights that were comparable to metal ores, were cut neatly into two like a piece of tofu. Even towering trees over 10 meters tall were snapped after the white light blazed past. A bottomless abyss also opened up in the ground. Almost 100 undead creatures were sliced and diced by the light and completely shattered whenever the light passed over them. Marceau still held the magic scroll in her hands and was continuing to chant the long incantation. She once again released 3 rays of white light that were more than 10 meters long, using the extremely valuable forbidden scroll. More undead creatures were destroyed wherever the white light passed through. Out of them, one of the flashes of white light instantly sliced toward Marceau when it locked onto him from the air. This spatial edge was as fast as lightning and was on top of Marceau in an instant. Marceau was determined to eliminate Marceau, so she focused all her attention onto that spatial edge. Due to this spatial edge was not only fast but also accurate, as if it wasn't going to give Marceau a chance to escape. Using the speed of the art of the mnemonic ninth heaven, Marceau retreated towards the dense forest behind. During so, he continuously changed directions in an attempt to avoid the spatial edge. However, this spatial edge was actually following him like a shadow beneath Marceau's commands and chased Marceau no matter how he moved. It seemed like she wouldn't stop if she didn't slice Marceau apart. Marceau swore silently in his heart, then headed into a swamp. He flew back out as a muddy man with a waver of his body, venturing even further into the depths. PFFT. The spatial edge sliced downward, slicing the muddy Marceau in half, then entered deeper into the ground without any decrease in power. It once again created an enormous bottomless trench. He finally died. Marceau let out a sigh as she panted heavily, then looked at the magic scroll that had expended all of its magic. She murmured with heartbreak, "He truly is someone hard to deal with, making me waste such a valuable magic scroll." Just as Marceau moved her attention to the magic scroll in her hands, a figure covered in mud in the deep trench of sludge and water moved. A cold light suddenly flashed past and pierced through Marceau's body. The huge pain caused Marceau to be a bit confused, but she then saw a figure within the mud move in front of her, revealing Han Shao as the mud was shook off. I wasted another Yin demon. This spatial edge is so powerful. It even ripped apart the invisible and formless Yin demon. Han Shao also said heartbrokenly, then flew towards Marceau. He looted her and the adventurers of all equipment and rings, placing them in his own space ring. When he arrived in front of Marceau, Han Shao put away her staff and took away her space ring without hesitation. The fact that Marceau had a forbidden magic scroll meant that she must have been a filthy rich person. A Fire Grand Magus could easily gain prestige and wealth alongside a noble rank in any country. Marceau is naturally not an exception in the Brute Merchant Alliance. The entire ground was filled with shattered bones and flesh. A large majority of the undead creatures that Han Shao summoned had been sliced apart by the spatial edges. On the other hand, the Fire, Earth and Wood elite zombie had been the first sent to the other dimension, protecting them all, timing from the spatial edges attacks. The undead creatures knew no fear. Those that were still alive still stood there awaiting Han Shao's next order. Han Shao gazed at the scene beneath him as he held Marceau's space ting. He then took out his skeletal staff to send the undead creatures back to the other dimension. After doing all that, Han Shao raised his head and gazed around. He discovered that thanks to the Forbiddensville spatial edge, there were enormous trenches in a radius of 1,500 meters. Towering trees and boulders had all been hacked to pieces. It really was a complete mess. It was unknown whether it was due to the lack of Marceau's mental power or the lack of stored magic within the magic scroll that spatial edge spell had only released 30% of its true power. If the complete power had been released, there would have been at least more than 20 flashes of light, and the number might even increase according to the caster's mental power strength. If it was casted by a powerful sacred space magus, pretty much all of the living creatures and plants in the small city would be torn to shreds by the spell, as it had a terrifyingly wide area of effect. As Han Shao held the space ring that Marceau left behind after her death, he wondered about the method of opening it as he flew casually towards the cemetery of death. During this process, Han Shao used his remaining Yin demon to find that a team of roughly 5,000 was stationed outside the dark forest. Han Shao surveyed this team of 5,000 and realized out that they were actually a proper troop of knights that had come from the Brute Merchant Alliance. Some of the tents were blocked by magical boundaries as they faintly radiated a powerful aura. Han Shao frowned slightly. After surveying them for a while, he thought of Marceau and those adventurers that died in his hand, and suddenly felt that they were with these people. Marceau was someone of the Brute Merchant Alliance. The three swordsmen within the adventures had the same sword and shield pattern on their left shoulder as these knights who were resting. It meant that they must have come from this troop. The Brute Merchants Alliance was a distance from the dark forest. After passing through the dark forest, they would arrive directly at Zajoski City on the southwest of the Lancelot Empire. The knights had good equipment, fine war horses, and some even more powerful experts. It was an unknown why they appeared in the dark forest. After looking around for a bit, Han Shao was silently shocked by this troop. He noticed that their power was even a bit stronger than how they'd first appeared. The magical pulses from the central tent were intense, with some strange sounds ringing out faintly from it. After Han Shao released his consciousness, he kept on feeling that there was something amiss inside. After thinking about it, he decided to have a look at what these people planned to do. Chapter 318. Saving the beauty. A shrill miserable scream rang out from the tent. This extremely tragic scream, which wasn't completely suppressed by the boundary on the tent, came to an abrupt end. Han Shao caught a faint reverberation with his great sensitivities. The only remaining Yin demon slowly drifted over to that direction in a probe. However, Han Shao had already felt magic fluctuation ripple out in all directions before the Yin demon even came close. With his extraordinary knowledge, he immediately knew that this was a soul inspection magic. Han Shui hurriedly withdrew the Yin demon. After the soul inspection magic was released, a dazzling rift suddenly cracked open in the sky. It patrolled the surrounding area like a bright eye. Han Shao immediately held his breath and entered the realm in which nothing affected him, his body hidden in the lush foliage of a big tree. The fluctuation of the soul inspection magic drifted out gently like water ripples. When it passed through Han Shao, he felt a bit of surprise. However, he easily avoided the inspection with a tight lockdown on his consciousness. "There's someone there!" A soft cry suddenly rang out from the tent. A figure shot out from the tent like a streak of lightning. A team of knights followed closely behind that silhouette, quickly chasing towards the east. Rustling sounds traveled quickly, and from that area Han Shao clearly heard that a person was swiftly running away from where the knights stationed. It seemed that there were also others who were paying attention to this troop of the Brute Merchant Alliance. However, they must have not concealed themselves very well, since their tracks were discovered. Han Shao remained where he was without moving. His eyes swept again through the tents in the distance, stopping at the few in the center of the group. The withdrawn Yun demon was once again released. It flew towards the direction of where the sound had traveled. What had the Knights of the Brute Merchants Alliance come to the dark forest for? Han Shao was full of doubts, his bright eyes looking at the tent in the center as he silently pondered. Rumbled out. A huge explosion echoed from the direction in which that figure had rushed toward. Afterwards a strange cooing laughter resounded sinisterly. "Hey hey, I didn't expect two beautiful women. Don't think of getting away. Cecilia, you go first. I'll stop him." A familiar female voice rang out from the distance. Han Shao had been calmly watching the tent and suddenly paled upon hearing this voice. His heart had been as still as clear water, yet was instantly disrupted. He shot out like a sharp arrow flying across the sky, drawing a silver arc through the air. It was Emily's voice. It had been someone who Han Shao didn't know. He naturally wouldn't have poked his nose in their business. However, since it was Emily in that area, he definitely wouldn't let anything happen to her. "Want to run? Kiki, you can't escape." The nasty cooing of an owl rang out again, accompanied by the sounds of spells and weapons colliding. Han Shao's heart was on fire with anxiety as he utilized the art of the mnemonic ninth heavens to its extreme. He reached that area in the span of 3 breaths, much faster than the Yun demon. Broken uprooted trees filled the area. Emily and Cecilia wore pure green magic robes, their delicate faces painted with green plant sap. Their entire bodies seemed to blend into one with the dark forest as they leaned on a big tree trunk and ceaselessly casted magic spells. Several members of the Dark Mantle, with their strength, agility and endurance enhanced by Cecilia's magic, were fiercely throwing themselves in front of the attacks from the Brute Knights. There was a thin middle-aged man with short red hair and a cruel smile hanging on his face. He stood behind the knights with his hands behind his back, watching Emily and Cecilia struggle while cackling non-stop. "Who is it?" The thin middle-aged man suddenly discovered Han Shao dashing over. Surprise flashing through his eyes, he raised his left hand to form a complicated magic formation. An enormous force then surged out from his palm and quickly assaulted Han Shao. Bang! It was as if being hit by an iron mountain. Han Shao immediately felt dizzy. He glared furiously at the middle-aged man, unable to move forward. The middle-aged man exclaimed. His eyes switched from Emily and Cecilia to Han Shao. The lines in the center of his palm twisted up like a snake, faintly revealing a trace of blood. Whistled. Han Shao finally mobilized the Demon Slayer Edge, its murderous intent billowing to the skies and filling the area. The middle-aged man suddenly roared to the heavens. His originally 1 meter 75 centimeters body began to grow with unimaginable changes. The man's smooth glossy skin was instantly covered in a thick hairy coat. His slender long arms became very strong and sturdy. His body expanded to 10 meters before transforming into a huge black bear. The bear growled and slammed down his paw, ferociously smashing down Han Shao. Han Shao had intended to fly up but suddenly staggered. He discovered that the gravity in the surrounding had increased tenfold. Han Shao couldn't react in time in his surprise, and the feeling was extremely unsettling. Brian. Emily had been about to cast a dark magic when she finally discovered Han Shao's appearance. She didn't have the time to feel happy when the palm of the black bear slapped down like a small mountain. Emily screamed in panic. As his movement had been affected, Han Shao's mind churned rapidly in the face of this crisis. Seeing the huge paw slam down, he immediately infused magical yuan into the Demon Slayer wretch. Blood-red light exploded and shot to the skies from the weapon that had absorbed an enormous amount of killing intent from resentful souls. Clouds of blood drifted out continuously, transforming into thin blood-red threads that wrapped wrapped around the Demon Slayer wretch. A glaring red light abruptly beamed out from the tip of the Demon Slayer wretch. The endless vicious resentful intent shot straight at the bear's paw. The bear's gray pupils wavered slightly, the thick fur on his arm standing erect like needles. This paw emitted light waves that ripped forth like the surface of a water disturbed by a thrown rock. Rumble rumble. Loud rumbling sounds echoed from the collision of the Demon Slayer edge and the black bear's palm. Blood red light radiated in all directions, accompanied by the agonized cry of the black bear. A force that could topple the mountains and overturn the seas surged violently into Han Shao-Oh's arm. The force was purely brute power without any skill. Even Han Shao-Oh's rock-solid body couldn't withstand it. The vessels of his right hand holding the Demon Slayer edge burst open. The hell? What kind of person is this? Han Shao could help but curse. After his strength had spiked up a great margin after entering the separate demon realm, he'd thought that there wouldn't be many people that could exceed him in strength. He had unexpectedly been injured by Kasi last time, and now he was even wounded after one strike. Who are you? ? After one blow, the big black bear shrank back into the thin middle-aged man. However, his palm was now dripping with blood. He looked at Han Shao, terrified disbelief on his face. Not paying attention to his opponent, Han Shao rushed over to Emily as soon as the terrifying gravity was lifted, shouting, "Hurry and get away from here. There are more experts coming." Cecilia, one of the three dark mantle heavyweights, had observed the fight from beginning to end. A strange look filled her eyes as she looked at Han Shao. Upon hearing her shout, she suddenly turned to the front and softly yelled, "Retreat." As her words fell, Cecilia took out a magic scroll. Her long slender arm held the scroll and shook it fiercely. A space door appeared amidst a dazzling white light in front of her. The Dark Mantle members struggling with the knights seemed to know beforehand that Cecilia would do that, as they immediately disengaged from their opponents and entered the space door. Not waiting for Han Shao to react, Emily grabbed his hand and dragged him through the space door without any reservations. Cecilia then also leapt into it. It was as if they had taken a transportation matrix. A white light flashed as everyone appeared in the middle of a river. Heads poked up from the water's surface, the entire group resembling drowned rats gulping in fresh air in big mouthfuls. "Brian, shouldn't you be at Bretel City? How are you here?" Emily had let go of Han Shao's hand and asked after sticking her head out of the river's surface. "It's very easy for me to come here. You know." Han Shao winked several times at Emily, his voice quiet. Emily was stumped for a bit before recalling the cemetery of death within the dark forest. With the transportation matrix there, Han Shao could easily run back and forth no matter where he was. "Damn it, why did we end up here? Hurry up, they're chasing us." Cecilia's voice rang out in the distance. Her body was dripping wet as she shouted suddenly. Emily sent a signal to Han Shao with a glance upon Cecilia's shout. The two immediately followed the Dark Mantle members in, leaving the river, moving along a path leading to the dark forest. Chapter 319, The Art of Shapeshifting. Who was that just now? Han Shao didn't forget to ask Emily about the identity of the middle-aged man as they hastily fled. Emily arrowed out of the small river, her dripping wet body enveloped in a deep black mist. She revealed only her flawless face as she quickly caught up to the group behind Cecilia. Cecilia was walking quickly in the front. Emily and Han Shao were side by side in the back, and low-ranked Dark Mantle members brought up the rear. Emily turned to glance at Han Shao and explained that was Castle, a great druid who betrayed the Druidic Order and a terrifying powerhouse in his own right. Even though he's betrayed the Druidic Order and can no longer utilize the force of nature, he can still skillfully use the shape-shifting art of the great druids. That transformation back then was him turning into an earth bear that can utilize the art of gravity. Taking him head-on like that, your strength is becoming more and more impressive. Upon hearing that his counterpart was a great druid, Han Shao suddenly remembered great druid Caspian. He subconsciously compared them and felt that Caspian was much weaker in strength. Caspian is also a great druid. Why isn't he as powerful as Cassel? Han Shao frowned and inquired, inwardly doubtful. Emily casually arranged her messy hair. She glanced at Cecilia in the front before continuing to explain the great druids can train in the various magical arts of the Druidic Order. The majority of them master the method to manipulate plants. According to the legends, this is the ability that the goddess of nature has bestowed upon them. However, The art of shapeshifting isn't as easily mastered. Only a few great druids with extraordinary talent can successfully grasp it. It looks like Caspian hasn't fully mastered it yet. Otherwise he couldn't have been so easily captured last time in Valen City. Han Shao had to muse on Emily's words for a moment before he could understand them. He thought it to be quite an irony that Caspian, who'd always served the goddess of nature, couldn't learn the art of shapeshifting while the traitor of the Druidic Order could learn it. Right, what mission brought you guys to the Dark Forest this time? Han Shao leisurely followed Emily along the way into the lush forest. He continued to ask her about their purpose. Cecilia was leading the way at the front. She suddenly tossed her long beautiful hair and sent pearls of crystal clear water rolling down. She turned her head to direct her bright eyes at Emily and let out a faint snort. We still could have left safely even without your help. This mission is under my charge and even Big Sis Emily has to listen to me. Your name isn't listed in this mission so you don't need to know. Emily had been about to answer and couldn't help but feel apologetic toward Han Shao for Cecilia's words. She said to him with a wry smile, since Mistress Cecilia has spoken I'd better not say anything. Big Sis Emily. Cecilia stared at Emily with rebuke in her eyes, saying softly, we have to be clear about work and personal matters. I know, Emily cried out before smiling at Han Shao. Alright, you shouldn't ask too much. We're fine. If you have matters to handle, go quickly. No need to worry about us. Cecilia had obviously created the space door through the magic scroll. However, since she possessed the scroll, it meant that even without Han Shao's appearance, Cecilia could still have brought Emily and the group to safety with the scroll. Therefore it didn't quite count as Han Shao having saved Cecilia. Even though Han Shao was still worried about Emily, it was obvious that Cecilia didn't want him to be involved, so he didn't say any more after hearing her words. Han Shao was planning to say a few words to Emily when he suddenly realized that he'd arrived at the forest troll's territory while following Cecilia's group. At first sight, a dozen blue-green troll warriors hurled their axes straight at Cecilia without a word. Hateful forest trolls, why are their weapons getting more and more sophisticated lately? Exclamation mark. An arc drew across Cecilia's chest and triggered a magic formation, spilling liquid into the air before coalescing into a magnificent blue ice crystal shield. The axes thrown by the troll warriors created clanking sounds upon hitting the ice shield. They only left some faint marks on the surface and simply couldn't penetrate the defense of the ice shield. This is the territory of the forest trolls. Let's first hide in here. Once the Redbud Knights enter this area, these greedy, idiotic forest trolls will definitely risk their lives to attack them. Even though the Redbud Knights are one of the top 10 knights of the continent, their power will be greatly restricted in this forest. The forest trolls tribe isn't small either, so they will definitely cause some trouble for those knights. Even if the Redbud Knights do destroy all of the trolls, it can be considered eliminating a harmful element of the dark forest. Cecilia coldly narrated as she watched the forest trolls run away after throwing their weapons. She then turned to the masked Dark Mantle members and ordered destroy the forest troll scouts in front. Once they're provoked, they'll definitely attack with all they have when the Redbud Knights arrive. Not only can we take this opportunity to escape, we might even come out on top. Several Dark Mantle members had already rushed out as soon as Cecilia's words sounded. These folks had at least the strength of senior swordsmen. A few mere forest troll scouts absolutely had no way to resist them. At this moment, Han Shao suddenly blocked their way with a darkened face and commanded in a low tone, find another way. You guys cannot touch these forest trolls. The forest troll race could be considered a force in Han Shao's hand. They treated the little skeleton as their god Thatara. This force was completely under Han Shao's control and he did his orders without hesitation. He'd be using them a great deal from now on, so he certainly couldn't let Cecilia borrow the Redbud Knights' power to exterminate the tribe. Any of the top 10 knights in the continent would be veterans who'd been through numerous battles. Since the Redbud Knights were on this list, they would only need 100 of their fellows to slaughter over 500 forest trolls. Han Shao had precisely heard of their reputation, which was why he was absolutely against Cecilia doing so. Otherwise, the only thing awaited the forest trolls would be genocide. This was something completely completely unacceptable to Hanshao. They're only some greedy forest trolls. Why are you protecting them? You're crazy, aren't you? Question mark. Cecilia wrinkled her delicate brows, looking unhappy as she coldly rebuked Hanshao. Hurry up and take a detour. I can feel the Redbud Knights close behind. These forest trolls are of use to me and no one can touch them. Otherwise don't blame me for offending you as your subordinate, Hanshao said frostily, looking at Cecilia in a manner that brooked no room for discussion. You are obstructing our mission. As a member of the Dark Mantle, do you realize that I have the right to punish you? Exclamation mark. Cecilia was also angered by Hanshao. She glared at him, her voice rising in anger. Detour. Otherwise don't blame me for not being polite. Hanshao wasn't scared at all, instead stressing his words. Little sis Cecilia, how about taking a detour? Consider giving me some face. Seeing the two locked in an argument, Emily hastily tugged on Cecilia's clothes and asked in a pleading tone. Cecilia had just witnessed Hanshao fight fearlessly against the transformed big earth bear, so she knew full well that his power was absolutely unfathomable. The knights chasing after them could arrive any moment now. It was pointless to be locked in an impasse with Hanshao now. Cecilia was caught between a rock and a hard place. Upon hearing Emily's pleas, she swept a cold glance at Hanshao. I will demand an explanation from that old fox Candide about this. We go, let's take a detour. After her words finished, Cecilia turned around and led the way. Emily threw a glance at Hanshao before hurriedly chasing after the angry Cecilia. The Dark Mantle members participating in Cecilia's mission also glared at Hanshao in an ill manner as they left one by one. Dattera. After Cecilia's group had left, the forest trolls suddenly surrounded Hanshao when they saw him. Hanshao was taken aback until he heard the sounds of footsteps fast approaching. He hurriedly led the forest trolls away from this place. The traitor of the Druidic Order Grey Druid Castle burst onto the scene with roughly 60 Redbud Knights shortly after Hanshao had left. Even though he'd betrayed the Druidic Order, his experience in forests yet remained. Looking at the two paths of footprints in front while sniffing the scents in the air, Cassel pointed at the direction where Cecilia's group had left. Chase after them. For me, they have indeed run in this direction. Humphrey. No one can evade the pursuit of me. Cassel in the forest. Chapter 320. Treasure Trove. Hanshao didn't stop to chat with the forest trolls after dragging them far away, nor did he enter the forest troll village to meet the old priest who could understand the common tongue. He backtracked on his original path and snuck into the camp of the Redbud Knights. With the space store scroll, Cecilia's group should have no trouble escaping, even though their power couldn't measure up to Cassel's group. However, Hanshao felt that something wasn't quite right for the Redbud Knights of the Brute Merchants Alliance to appear in the dark forest. Since Emily couldn't tell him the truth because of Cecilia, Hanshao decided to check things out for himself. Using his only remaining Yin demon to scout ahead, Hanshao sent out his consciousness at the same to sense any presence within a certain range. Noon sunlight pierced through layers of foliage stubbornly shining down on the ground of the dark forest. At a glance, these rays of sunlight looked like a bunch of sharp arrows. Hanshao's sensitivities were razor sharp, moving between the trees as swiftly as a veteran hunter. His figure dashed swiftly through and over several growths and rocks without making a sound. Relying on his pervertedly strong sensitivity and the Yin demon's vision, Hanshao arrived at the staging area of the Redbud Knights after a few minutes. The knights were scattered in the area as they rested lazily. They squinted beneath the sunlight, chatting about stuff that shouldn't be heard by children. From time to time, perverted laughs rang out from within the clusters of knights. Sitting apart from them, there were also several knights who were persevering in training their fighting aura alone. The magic enchantment on the tent in the center had yet to be lifted. 1 to 2 miserable screams faintly echoed out, seemingly the sounds of criminals being tortured. Hanshao hid patiently within the foliage of a big old tree to observe the Redbud Knights. He spread his powerful consciousness to enclose a small area, preventing anyone from getting close. A Yin demon soundlessly drifted around to spy and constantly eavesdropped on the knights' conversations. The majority of the knights talked about boring, trivial matters. However, There were some stern-faced knights who were in the middle of a serious meeting. The Yin demon cautiously eavesdropped on their meeting. Picking up on their brief descriptions, Han Shao gradually gleaned the purpose of their trip to the dark forest this time. A faint wave of magical fluctuation emitted from the tents among the knights, followed by 3 soul-searching magic spells. Han Shao had been on guard, so he hurriedly withdrew the Yin demon back into his body before using magical cultivation to hide his presence. When the fluctuation of the 3 soul-searching spells passed through, a huge eye appeared above Han Shao's head. It was the sky's eye again. The eye in the sky looked down below for a moment before gradually dispersing. Wu. The battle signal sound of a buffalo horn trumpet suddenly resounded. A shout echoed from the tent in the middle. Assemble, prepare to march. The lazily resting soldiers instantly sprang up, organizing their armor and weapons at the horn's call. They walked energetically towards the fierce war horses grazing and drinking at the river's bank. A surge of domineering air suddenly spread out. They were indeed worthy of belonging to one of the top 10 knight troops in the continent. It didn't show when they rested, but when they organized themselves they naturally emitted this fierce atmosphere. Han Shao was secretly surprised as he watched the Redbud Knights gather from his hiding place within the lush foliage. He began to worry for the races in the underground world of the dark forest. The Redbud Knights had traveled the lengthy distance of 1,000 miles to the dark forest this time to deal with the underground world beneath the dark forest. The underground world produced various types of exotic ores as well as crystals and beautiful jade used to refine magic weapons and protective gear. However, the path connecting the underground world and the world above was extremely secretive. People above ground were generally hard-pressed to find it. As a great druid of the druidic order in the dark forest, Cassiel had naturally known of the entrance to the underground world beneath the dark forest. One time when he'd ventured into the underground world to explore, he'd stumbled upon the site of the lizardmen mining a small magic crystal mine. Since magic crystal ores were extremely valuable, Cassiel had been taken over by greed and violated the order's doctrine, wanting to monopolize the magic crystal mine. However, an unknown powerful super rank creature had appeared to expel him when he was killing the lizardmen in the underground world. Furiously returning to the druidic order, Cassiel had tried to use the order's power to destroy the lizardmen along with that powerful super rank creature. It was a pity that the elder druid who worshipped the goddess of nature had rejected Cassiel's proposal out of his love for peace. He'd even angrily reprimanded Cassiel. Cassiel, blinded by greed, injured the elder druid out of rage, which put him on the wanted list by the druid recorder. He had to flee the dark forest, and now for reasons unknown he'd somehow partnered up with a brute merchant alliance. The wealth of the underground world as well as the small magic crystal mine had successfully tempted Kelt, the commander of the Redbud Knights of the brute merchant alliance. He'd led the elite of the Redbud Knights to cross a long distance, spending a month to travel into the dark forest with the intention of coming back with an enormous haul from the underground world. Kelt's hair was graying at the temples, his withered face engraved with the traces of time. His figure was tall and his eyes exuded a calm, peaceful atmosphere. If Han Shao hadn't known about the purpose of his trip here, he wouldn't have thought of Kelt as a greedy bandit from his appearance. After emerging from the tent, Kelt took out a clean white handkerchief and carefully wiped off the blood on his hands. When he was cleaning himself, he looked at the assembled Redbud Knights and casually asked the young mage beside him, "How come Teacher Marceau hasn't returned yet?" "My apologies, I don't know why Teacher hasn't come back even when it's already so late," the young mage answered hurriedly, and was obviously quite polite when facing Kelt. Promptly throwing away the blood-stained handkerchief, Kelt looked at his 2 clean slender hands with satisfaction. He said in a calm voice, "Forget it. Teacher Marceau knows what we need to do this time anyway. She can fly, so she can catch up with us once she finishes her matter. Let us leave first." Kelt then suddenly let out a loud clear whistle so shrill that it seemed to tear through the sky. A huge shadow flew over shortly afterwards. As it drew near, Han Shao saw that it was a green dragon over 20 meters long. This green dragon was much bigger than Gilbert. The strength of every dragon race wasn't necessarily measured based on volume. However, for the green dragon race it was indeed, that the bigger the volume the higher their power. This 20-meter green dragon must be a super rank magic creature at its second evolution. Otherwise it couldn't have achieved such a length. Kelt leapt up 7 or 8 meters into the air and landed nimbly on the green dragon. His 1 meter 80 centimeters tall figure only occupied a small space on the green dragon's back, but the faint presence that emanated from his body couldn't be covered up by the dragon's huge body. Kelt sat firmly on the back of the green dragon and let out another long high whistle. The green dragon flew rapidly through the sky like a huge dark cloud blotting a large patch of the air. Their direction seemed to be where Cecil was chasing Cecilia's group. The Redbud Knights on the ground below packed up their tents and slowly headed towards another direction under the leadership of several majors. Their chosen direction seemed to be towards the entrance to the underground world that Marceau had once entered. With such a powerful lineup, no one dared provoke them even in the extremely chaotic dark forest. The magic creatures in this region were all intelligent. They certainly wouldn't come to seek their own death. Therefore the Redbud Knights advanced leisurely and unhurriedly to their target destinations without encountering any obstructions. Some tragic screams echoed from the tent after they left. Marceau's students had suddenly cast fire magic. Waiting until these people completely left, Marceau flew over to examine the burned bodies. They seemed to be all lizardmen. It seemed the knights were looking for some information from these lizardmen. Kelt had likely gone off in pursuit of Cecil. With Kelt's strength, Marceau would be very worried if he joined the group chasing after Emily. Cecilia would be hard-pressed to escape even with the space door. After some hesitation, Marceau decided to follow Kelt and see what would happen. At this moment, however, a huge dazzling golden figure shot in Kelt's direction like a strip of golden lightning. Marceau even heard a familiar voice from its furious roaring. "It's the golden dragon who was trapped in the Forbidden Land last time. Oh, he seems to be attacking Kelt. This is getting more and more interesting." Exclaiming in surprise, Marceau snooped through the Demon to observe the situation on that side. He decided to get closer and took flight, keeping himself hidden. "Damnable bandit, you dared take advantage and rob my treasure while I wasn't present. Quickly hand it back over." The golden dragon roared at Kelt on the green dragon, its huge body thrashing in the sky. Lightning sparks crackled towards the green dragon.